We are here today with Gunda Tire. Gunda Tire is National Project Manager for PISA in Estonia, and Estonia has been performing exceptionally well in PISA. So congratulations, Tira, and welcome to Lisbon.
Thank you very much, and I'm so honored to be here.
The honor is ours completely. Now, it's really amazing because Estonia is the new star in PISA. I have here some numbers. Of course, you know all these numbers by heart, but let's go to 2015, for instance. The average of 3 domains in PISA. So first, Singapore, as usual, Hong Kong, Japan, Macau, fourth, and then when we go, Estonia. So way ahead of Finland, for instance, which is in 8th place, even of South Korea, way ahead of the United Kingdom, which is in the 23rd place. It's amazing. And if you go to 2018, for instance, we have the same thing. So now we have China. China, when we mean China, is not really China. China is selected parts of China, like Shanghai and so on, which are really very well. Then Singapore, Macau, Hong Kong, and then Estonia.
Estonia.
Way ahead again of Finland, way ahead of Taiwan, Poland, United States, France, Portugal, and so on. So you have been performing amazingly well. So congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
For Estonia and for the work you have been doing in PISA. Now, when we deal with this thing, so when we go and think about PISA, people sometimes ask questions related to what you are doing now. But I'd like to do a slightly different interview. I'd like to ask you what you did in the past that led you to this place, because that's what's really important. So let's say between 2005 or 2015, that period, what happened in Estonia?
I think we can even go more back in the past, because if you just look at the country comparisons, it's one thing, but you should actually look at the mean scores and the numbers, what is behind it. And if we look, for example, at the Estonian mean score, and the first time Estonia participated in science in 2006, we basically have the same score in 2018. So it's not like we have very much grown well, we have increased in reading and math, but it has been sort of at that same level. And so basically the education reforms that we did in late 90s probably started their impact for PISA 2006, because you need to have at least 6 years or so for all the education reforms to start working, to start reflecting what is happening. So I would stress more on the points, on the scores, on the averages. So some of the countries, many of the countries have a negative trend going downwards. Portugal is a positive trend, Estonia is a positive trend, Germany and Poland. So there are very few countries actually that have improved, but what is happening at the world level in education is more towards a negative trend.
You are quite right, because the average of all countries of the OECD, for instance, has been declining, which is worrisome. Of course, it's worrisome. So you did these reforms in late 20th century, and exactly what are those reforms?
So the history actually helped us, because Estonia was part of the Soviet Union, and it's a fact. And so once we broke off, we had to rethink everything about the way we want to live, about economy, and about what sort of children we want for the future. And so there was really a lot of thought put into what kind of education we want. We were very sure we don't want anything to do with the Soviet ideology, and that all had to be scrapped and taken out. There was quite a lot about science and math that could stay and how to redo it. In the 1990s, there was a big movement, a lot of discussion with all kinds of people involved, from universities, teachers, from the society. What sort of education do we want? And so the first national curricula, which was adopted in 1996, actually was already a result of this first
of this
discussion. Yes. of course, the curricula has been updated several times since then, but probably the first bases come from there. Then we invented the system of external evaluation.
Okay.
We have been all the time thinking about children with special needs, education needs, how to incorporate those, and there have been systems developed along the way. And school autonomy is coming back from 1990, so that the schools themselves can actually decide what is the style, how they want to teach, what they want to see from their schools. And there have been educational databases and things that the data would support if things are working or not, and those have been made public, and these are important for all schools to fill in with the data that they have. And so there's a complex of things, there are many activities, and for us to say this is the one why we are doing so well in PISA is kind of difficult. But
right,
if we
because
look
you have all these things that you referred to. But it's interesting that you started with the curriculum, then you went to assessment, then school autonomy, if I'm following correctly your order, then school, then helping children with needs, then school autonomy, then publicizing results. So,
right.
And this is, so you started with curriculum. But
I started with a curriculum because curriculum, or this idea, what kind of education we want, was the first thing at the end of the Soviet Union. It was a discussion already in 1987, there was a huge teachers' congress, and we kind of felt that something is going to happen, or maybe, I don't know exactly. The idea or the content of the education comes from there already. And in the beginning of 90s, there was this discussion of, they were arguing, they were fighting, they tried to bring all the Western ideas. They thought what was the education like in Estonia before the Soviet occupation in the 30s, and there were also some good ideas coming from those days. So I think that the content was something that probably did the start for the development of the new system.
So the curriculum, I'm going to stress this point because I actually wrote an article called Everything Starts with Curriculum, so I'm very glad to hear you saying that, so confirming it, or at least developing this idea. So you started with the curriculum, and but what's the curriculum? Is just general principles, or was it a detailed description of what students should learn?
Maybe that was a bit of an innovative part as well already from 90s, but the curriculum consists of two parts. One is the general part, and one is a subject-based part. And so teachers...
So disciplines, the disciplines.
The disciplines, for example, mathematics.
Physics.
And they wouldn't really give very detailed subject description, what is that what the teachers need to do, but they would very much concentrate on learning outcomes. That means this is
fantastic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to stress this. So instead of telling teachers how they should teach, you told teachers and schools and parents and students what you should learn.
What should you learn?
What's the outcome?
And if you have the learning outcomes and those are defined, then you can make the national assessments, because the national assessment concentrates on the learning outcomes. And that's how the process keeps going. And for the national curriculum, we have this general part which tells that subjects should be connected. I mean, we have had several reform updates. There are certain competencies that should go through all of the subjects. There is how we should evaluate the students. There is this general part. But to be honest, many teachers, they mostly look at the subject part because that's what they are supposed to do. But another part is, addition is that this school autonomy introduced the fact that national curriculum is not the basis for the studies at school. The school take it as a backbone, as a framework, and every school creates their own curricula.
But on the basis of national curriculum, because otherwise you couldn't have a national assessment, right?
Right. But that means that the national curricula is not so packed that each school can add more something that they want to teach to their children. For example, if they want to have a language school and they want to teach more foreign languages, then they have room for that. If it were packed, then the school wouldn't have room for. I mean, we still have 24 hours a day and not more. And
so how do you evaluate schools? So you just talked about one part, which is, from my point of view, the most important part is that learning outcomes. So what the school is doing regarding their students, what are they learning, how well are they learning, how are they developing themselves, the students. But you are talking now about a second thing, which is the schools autonomy. So schools are obviously evaluated by their results in learning outcomes, because that's what, but then you have,
only.
But you have also,
we have the internal evaluation.
Yes,
And the internal
yes.
evaluation was also started, I think somewhere around year 2000 or so. And I think this is quite a good principle, because it works with everybody. If I want to improve myself and I do it internally, then the result will probably be much better than if somebody comes and tells you, you didn't learn that and do this. So the schools were given quite a prescribed way how to do this internal evaluation, and they still have to rewrite it, redo it every, I think, 4 years, 3-4 years. That means they have to write this development plan for the school, what they want to achieve, what is their mission, vision, all of that, and then they reflect on what they did in the previous period. And so basically, this is all meant with willingness to improve yourself. So the schools themselves would improve. And so I think this combination of external evaluation and internal evaluation is something that is very good, and should probably be considered also as a.
I've also heard that you had a large number of inspectors from the ministry, and that number has been reduced. Can you explain that?
We don't have school inspectors.
You don't have them.
Well, we have a quite very limited number of people in the ministry, but because schools are owned by the municipality, so there might be somebody checking on the municipality level. But basically, the general rule is that we don't have school inspectors. They are only checking if there are some issues. For example, if parents complain or something has happened at the school and it comes to the ministry.
Sanitary questions or facilities questions, this type of thing.
Or somebody was treated unfairly, or something is being done not according to the...
Unlawfully.
The parents find all the possible ways, a kid was given homework over the weekend and that's against the law or something. But as a rule...
Is it against the law?
Yes, they made, it's maybe not a law, but there is a regulation that not to overburden children, they shouldn't study for it. There shouldn't be a big test on Monday.
But you have homework.
Yes, but there shouldn't be a big test on Monday, let's say, or if there are 2 or 3 big tests on Monday, then the parents can complain about that. But
so tests should be distributed
evenly, so that the children are not overburdened. That's the idea. So
and they learn more too, because when things are distributed, we learn more, right? That's human nature.
Absolutely, because you don't have stress so much, and you kind of,
Can we go back to the point of assessment? Because you were saying, if I'm interpreting it correctly, you were saying that you have a national assessment, external assessment, and then you have local assessment made by teachers. So how are things coordinated? Or maybe just to start, do you have exams or tests? What do you have along the K-12 curriculum?
We have this idea that external assessment should take place at several stages during the education. You can't just test at the end of school and say, oh, this is the result. Congratulations, what do I do with that? If I failed, I failed. Exactly. So basically, you should have the points of intervention earlier. And so for that, together with school autonomy, we have and with the curriculum and all of that, we have divided all these learning cycles or learning levels. Let's say first level is from year 1 to 3. To 3,
so you have an assessment at year 3.
We used to have at the end of 3, but now we have, they changed the mind not to have so much stress again, that it's at the beginning of year 4. So it's summer, it's more, children have forgotten things, so what is the real knowledge? And have a test at the end of year 4. Then we have at the beginning of year 4. Then we have the next point of information is again 3 years later. So from 4 to 6, what they have mastered during that time, and so they tested at the beginning of year 7. Year 9 is when we finish the compulsory education, so those would be the higher stakes tests for the kids, and year 12 is the end of upper secondary. And so we have 4 points of intervention. But these tests at year 4 and year 7, they are low stakes. The kids are not given a grade. But it should be a feedback to the school, to the teacher. Those should be the time to see if there are gaps and the interesting point is that we only have 10% of the national sample, which is the obligatory. But because these tests are so popular, schools want to do them because they voluntarily want to do the tests.
And students want to do the tests, and parents?
The parents probably do. The students, I don't know, but the schools want, and they do it. But because it's really not a big deal for the student. It's not like anything would happen to them if they fail it or so. But it's mostly as a feedback to the students, and we have had those now in a computer-based form, and we just had this fall. In grade 7, I was reading actually this morning an analysis of these standard tests, and they can see a little bit how COVID has impacted some of the, like, let's say in the sciences, how the test results in some aspects have gone down.
Everywhere, it has impacted everywhere.
And so these tests are meant to be a tool for the school to want to improve.
Okay, and for the students as well, and for the teachers as well.
And for the teacher. So the teacher knows what are the learning gaps, what is it they have missed, where should we pay more attention. And so yes, so the external assessment is a tool for the school to improve.
And these external assessments are subject-based? Yes. And what subjects are tested there?
We want to avoid this bias of saying that, let's say, the language and math are the only subjects. That there is science, there is social science as well.
Science, yeah.
Foreign languages. Some time ago, we even had in art, because we consider that human being has to has to know everything, or at a younger age, you can't just concentrate on something very specific. And so we also have now tests in digital competencies, which we are developing, and we have new tests in entrepreneurial skills, and we have also for the younger children tests on it's like general competencies, but these tests are so cute because there is, let's say, there is some part about mathematics, some part about Estonian language, and then they assess how the children, they ask them how you actually learn. Because this is one thing which, how do you memorize things?
So, metacognition.
Metacognition and some things like that, because that's not something that is taught very much at school. Because if
you are telling about 3rd grade?
These tests are now experimental. They are like 1st or 2nd grade already. But that's a plan for the future. Yes.
So it's pretty comprehensive. So you are testing all subjects, which I think it's pretty nice. But did you start by testing all subjects, or you were testing just like most countries do, 2 or 3 main subjects?
We started so that there was always math and Estonian, or Russian, or Estonian as a second language, and there was always a subject of surprise. That means the school didn't know that there will be a test at the end of school year, let's say for grade 6. If they knew that, for example, this year and they would rotate, not to overwhelm the schools, because if they would know that this year we will have, let's say, a test in English, the English teacher would have would stress, would do something extraordinary, and so, and for that reason, they announced to the schools only like a couple of weeks before the test. So that's the 3rd subject of the surprise. And but I think they don't have this surprise anymore because they have developed the tests in other subjects.
It's an interesting idea. It's a very interesting idea. Now you are talking about these are low stakes tests, and then you have high stakes tests, and high stakes tests are at 9th grade, which is the end of compulsory system.
Yes.
Right? Then you have high school, which is not compulsory, right? What do you mean by high stakes?
High stakes is that you get a grade. And if you fail, you fail, and so basically, the result of your performance will affect the next level of your study. So if you get poor grades, you might not get into the school which you want to in the future. And if you get poor grades at, let's say, grade 12, upper secondary school final exams, then you will not get in university because those are all connected.
And that's external, standardized
Yes.
external. But is it weighted with the internal assessment by teachers or not?
Not really.
Not really. Okay.
That's an independent assessment. Another point was that education is free, and that's by law. And if I, as a taxpayer, pay for the education of my country, I am supposed to get feedback. That's and that comes through
Accountability.
Accountability,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so this accountability idea was also at the very beginning already implemented. That taxpayers need to know how is our education doing, and so that's why we have a good reason to test children, and it also, of course, helps them to develop their career.
So what you are saying is that tests are designed in such a way and are faced in such a way that they are they constitute a way of helping students to boost their learning. Now, some countries have this dilemma that they say, okay, either we fail those students and then they are retained, or we lower our standards. I think this is not the right way to approach the thing. So I'd be interested in knowing how you approach that in Estonia.
Well, if a student has a need, it doesn't always have to be special education need. It can be any need.
Yeah,
They need help.
Yeah.
We don't very much believe in this retaining and failing the students, because that is punishing. You don't help them to improve, to go forward, but you just say, okay, study one more year in the same grade, and the results will be even worse for that student. Emotionally and all of that, they don't feel very comfortable with the younger children, especially once they start growing and somebody is very big and the others are all small, and so this is disturbing. So, and in that sense, I'm very happy with this the system which has been developed by now, and it's also a process of quite a few years, that each school, most of the bigger schools, they have something called like a support center for students who need support. It can be language support, it can be psychological support.
So additional hours?
Well, I can just tell a story from my daughter's school.
Please.
I went to a parents' evening, and one year they were telling that, well, our math results are below the level of national. And then a year later, they said, well, our mathematics has improved. And so I was asking, what is it you did? And it turns out that if you have, let's say, 25 students in mathematics, and let's say 2 of them don't understand a thing, so what they do, they disturb. But if you take these 2 students out of the class, and at the same time they are taken to a smaller, they call it a small class, where there is a special teacher who deals with those students. So they don't disturb, the others advance, and those who are in the small class, they also have a chance to improve.
But is that for the whole school year, or just
as long as it is needed? Yes.
So it's a temporary. Yeah,
it can be temporarily.
No, I think this is fantastic, because in many countries there is also this discussion about streaming or tracking, as the Americans say. Let's say separate kids, separate courses. This is not tracking. This is temporary tracking, in the sense that it's temporary extra help for these kids. I think that's the right approach.
Yeah, the streaming would
Some
be so
countries
that
are doing that.
That for example, you test the language proficiency, and then the smart ones go to one class, and the ones who don't. That is streaming. But this is not streaming. This is just helping those individuals who are disturbing otherwise. And then when there's the next lesson comes, they can go again. They have physical education. They run all together, and there is they are again together in the same classroom.
So they are in the same class, which is very important. I think this is But Gunda, one question I'd like to ask you is this: what about teachers? Teachers are the cornerstone of any education system. What's the situation in Estonia now? In many countries, we have a lack of teachers, and so we have to come up with ways of attracting them to this profession.
Yeah, Estonia is not.
What are you doing?
Estonia is not an exception, and that is actually one of the biggest problems that we have at the moment, because we don't have enough teachers. And so maybe we shouldn't really concentrate only on the young high school graduates as future profession, as future teachers. but also people who change their minds and who feel this calling. I mean, if I'm a businessman, but I really like teaching, maybe I can go to school, and I'm an engineer, and I do have the subject knowledge. Maybe I can go and be a teacher 2 times a week, and teach mathematics to a couple of grades, and then make money during the rest of the week. Or I can go to school and work more. We have a program called Back to School, so that adults are invited to join this program, pass these courses and subjects, and then go and join the teaching workforce.
So they can become teachers.
Yes.
Like what the Americans call the alternate route. So instead of studying to be a teacher, they study to know mathematics or history or whatever.
Yes.
And at the middle of their career, they switch, and with some training, they become teachers. So that's the way you are approaching it, or one of the ways you are approaching it.
The official, strategy is that we should have this innovative learner who is independent and who knows what he wants, so the child-based approach. And then I ask what actually happens in schools, and so there is both. There is the ones who are supporting more child approach, and then there are more traditionalists, and then in the end, what matters is that it should be individual. There are teenage boys who really need to push, and for them the child-based approach would not work because they don't do it themselves. So if it works, what works best for whom, that would be the idea. But education is a traditional subject, so we take traditions from the olden days and we give them to the future as well. So we shouldn't forget that, and we should learn how to combine it and find this fine balance between old and the new. And I think that way we can be most successful.
This is a great place to stop, because really what you are saying is that you have all this innovation, but you keep an eye on the traditional ways of teaching, and you can do it and you can trust it because you have assessment. And so we go back to where we started. Curriculum and assessment are key things and key pieces for the success of Estonia. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gunda. This was a great interview with Gunda Tire, the National Project Manager for PISA in Estonia.